it's Chimsy. It's me, I'm back in Maryland. Still wearing a sweatshirt that says New York City. Listen, I'm gonna manifest it again. I was just praying to God like,
Lord, I know you can do anything, but this might be too much. Can you help me afford to live in New York City? Like, is that possible? Is that above your pay grade?
and God was like, obviously not. So let's see how long I'm here in Maryland. For this video, I wanna talk about an experience I had while shooting the commercial I did with 368 Studios in New York. It literally has been haunting me, and I was like, why is this experience haunting me? As I was reflecting and contemplating on it, I sort of realized it was because I was doing something I'd done in the past, playing this like older role, not being comfortable stepping into new phases of my life. That's like what I'm gonna talk about. The actual experience is really more about poverty, but we'll get into that. First, thank you Patreon people, I love you. Y'all are the best. If you wanna join my Patreon, it's patreon.com/chimsy. What you'll get on my Patreon is I'm gonna start going live again, and what I normally do is that afterwards I hop on Patreon and we hang out for like a separate like private Zoom conversation. And I usually let my Patreon people know what videos I have coming up, another behind the scenes stuff and videos and photos and all that good stuff. So if you wanna be a part of it and also support your girl being able to move back to, like, it is the best city, you know? Like, I was thinking that maybe laying on a beach in Mexico is better, but honestly, like, I miss it. I miss New York, I miss my baby. Send me back. Send me back! This is the experience of poverty that happened that has been haunting me ever since. And then we'll talk about the role repeating. As a part of the commercial, you know, I'm selling this tax product. I literally had the hoodie they gave me from the time I did the web series with them. That was it. I didn't even have a jacket. So they were like, bet, go to Zara or something, pick out a top. And I distinctly remember this moment, because what I remember is the deafening silence that followed. I was like,
oh yeah, I could just like go to like TJ Maxx or whatever.
and they just were like, and it haunted me. It haunted me. And I was like, why is this haunting me? And I don't think it was them. I don't think it was any judgment they were passing. And I did then later watch Z-Way on Showtime because the hotel I was staying at gave me Showtime for free. And she was making this joke about like famous people versus like normie people. And she made this joke about like shopping at TJ Maxx. And I was just like, am I showcasing my poverty? That's the thing about trauma, y'all. You think you're hiding it, but you're not, and everyone can tell. And that's the hardest thing to realize is like, we are fooling nobody with none of our stuff. I think this might have been the first thing I ever bought at Zara. And Zara to me is just fancy H&M. So it's not even like it's like Bergdorf Goodman. It's also just another fast fashion retail chain, but it's one of the like nicer ones, you know? And so I felt in that moment, I was being offered a nice version of something, and I was so rooted in my patterns of like poverty and like being budget conscious and stuff that I was just like, no, let me do like the cheapest possible version, the lowest quality possible version. And I think the shirt I ended up buying, I did go to Zara, ended up being like $25. So it wasn't like I spent $100 on a shirt, but for me, what really struck me was the mindset, and very lovingly, the way that people did not engage. They didn't say,
girl,
they didn't judge me or shame me at all, but there was this level of awareness that I got to of, oh, I have been saying that I am only worth TJ Maxx. And I bought so much stuff from TJ Maxx that I really like, so it's not like a judgment on TJ Maxx, but it's just this mindset of, especially when offered, like it wasn't even like I was having to advocate for myself. They were like, go get something nice and we'll pay for it. And I was just like, no. So that has really haunted me, and I've continued to really process. But another related experience that I found was also an echo of a way I used to be when I used to work in my nonprofit role. I was, ooh, I love to say it, I was the talent. I was the talent. The first time I was ever called the talent was when I shot this reality show, which I truly pray,
please Lord, let this never ever see the light of day.
But I shot this reality show in Mexico. It was a real experience. And when I got off the airplane, I was being picked up by security. And so I'm just minding my business, waiting for security to come scoop me, which also, what a lifestyle. And this guy comes up and he's like,
are you the talent?
and I was like, oh. Yes! Yes, I am! Literally, from that moment, a seed took root. A seed was planted and it took root and it was watered and it burst forth. And I was like, it is only right that I'm I'm referred to as the talent. And so then when it happened again, when I was working with the studio and they sent me the email and they were like, here's the talent fee. I was just like, oh yes, the talent fee. That's correct. This is something Thomas Hubel talks about, my favorite. He talks about the levels of the spiritual journey, and there's practice, the meditation, contemplation, prayer, all these things that allow more light to come in. There's the integration, where it goes from being this insight, you know, in our spirit to actually being in our body. And then he talks about, he uses some term about like moral, ethical choices. Like basically your actual life starts to radiate this insight that you have. When the term talent was introduced to me, that was like an insight. And I was like, wow, I could be the talent. And then what I realized in being in this commercial is that it hadn't actually radiated out into how I was living my life. Back when I used to work in the nonprofit space, I started as an intern and I worked my way up. If you've ever been a low paid intern, and I think this might have something to do with like the immigrant background as well, you really want to be useful and you really want to go above and beyond. Also, I think there's something tied to like wanting love and needing it in the form of affirmations from people being like, good job. What I found is that while I was there in the space, there was this urge to like, should I like set up a camera? Should I like move some furniture? For the most part, I tried to like rein it in because I was like, Chimdi, you've been hired as a talent, so your role is to know your lines. So actually go ahead and read the script and get your lines down. So when it's your time to perform, you can be ready. But I still like, I couldn't resist, right? So there was multiple times where like folks were setting up and I was like,
hey, can I help?
and they were like, nope, you just sit right there and do your thing. And I was like,
Okay.
at the very end of the shoot, there was actually gonna be a holiday party. I'm already there, like I'm not gonna change my outfit. So I also was like, do you guys need any help? And they were like, no, that's not your job. I think it's a reflection of your own self-love and self-respect because you just radiate out what you have in your own heart, right? Everyone there has such a love and respect for themselves and for their own work and for their own craft. And I really saw that again and again, such that they were like, we love and respect you and we love and respect what you are bringing and the role you have in this. So we're not gonna ask you to be out here doing breakdowns and setups and carrying lights and cooking the food and doing all this other stuff. Like that's not what you're here for. You are the talent and we love and respect you in that role. There's a level of healing you can do by yourself, but I do think there's a level of healing that has to happen in community because it's about restoring the way you're supposed to be treated. And I'm trying to say this seriously because it is serious, but I'm also saying it from this mindset of like, I'm supposed to be treated like the talent. And I really appreciate them for treating me like the talent as I deserve. In thinking about this experience, I remembered a very distinct experience that happened at the last job I had, and I worked there as a coach. I actually just had a chat with someone who was asking about how I went into consulting and coaching. It's because I got to do it for 3.5 years of that role, and I was there as a manager and then I was promoted to director. Before being there, I was at this other job, and that was the one where I was at intern, and that first organization was a lot smaller, so it was a lot more of that all hands on deck energy because it was only like 13, 14 of us in the whole organization. So I went from that organization to this one that had hundreds of people, which to me was like wild. And I remember we had our first in-person event. In my role, I was taking over this program that the then director was doing. My role in attending this first in-person event was to really learn and see the way she led this program so that I could take that on moving forward. I brought the old mindset, the old role with me to this new role. I feel like I'm preaching about the wineskins. You know that thing about you don't put new wine in old wineskins? I feel like it's that. It's basically that metaphor. It was maybe like 3 or 5 of us, and there was the like entry level position was there as well, right? And so she was supporting on putting the name tags together, right? So much of my life has been spent cutting and putting name tags in the little plastic thingies. Like whenever I see a plastic thingy with my name in it, I know that someone spent a very long time designing those name tags, printing them out, cutting them up, putting it in the thing. Like it's a whole job in and of itself. I knew how much work that took. And so instead of being there in the room, watching the director sort of lead the program and learning and getting ready for my new role, what I did is I stayed in my old familiar comfortable role, and I was like in another room with the coordinator cutting up name tags and stuff. My director came up to me and she was just like, where were you? And I was like, oh, I was helping with the name tags. Here I am thinking I was being helpful, while also knowing deep down that was me being scared about stepping into this new role. And she was very much like, it is more important that you are in the room seeing how I am leading this program than it is for you to be helping this other person do name tags. And it's that same thing of love, because some people, they will just take advantage of the energy that's just like, oh, I just want to help, I just want to be useful. But this person, I love her so much, much. She really was like, no, I care and support you, and I see your leadership, and I see your growth, and I see what's possible, and I know why we hired you, and I know the talent you have. So instead of you doing what you think will be helpful but is actually just you staying small, I'm going to encourage and empower you to step into this new role that you're supposed to be in. Whenever something happens a few times in your life and you find yourself cycling back, to me that's a real invitation to see where the shadow is, to see where the echo of the trauma is. Something Thomas Hubel says is that if you're not ready to see the real thing that happened that was so overwhelming that you had to shut it off, you'll just see symptoms in your life, and often those symptoms will be in conversations and experiences that are repetitive. And I know as someone who is a creative coach and is growing my YouTube channel, it's gonna happen again, that I'm gonna wanna stay in this smaller role, and that for me to be in my full expression and live into my full potential, it's going to require me recognizing when I'm no longer fitting into a certain role, and it's time to actually bring in support and help to help me get to that next level. And something that's been said many times, I don't know who exactly has this quote, if your dream only encompasses you, then it's not big enough. And I know for me, there's a certain level of creating on YouTube, there's a certain level of coaching where I can do it by myself. I can like draft all my Instagram posts and post them and be the DMs and have the calls and send the follow-up emails while also making regular YouTube videos and also updating my Patreon and also engaging in my comment section and also going on podcasts, also doing commercials. There's a level where it's like, I can do all of this by myself, no help, but I know there'll be a certain point where it's like, actually, that's not attainable. And I had a conversation maybe a year ago with someone who was like,
girl,
you're already at that point. And I was like,
you don't know my finances. You don't really know where I'm at.
what I'm doing now is just bringing awareness to the fact that sometimes it takes someone outside of me, it takes someone loving and caring about me to say, hey, it's time for you to actually get some support and get some help. And like I said, I'm still doing it by myself. So I'm not there yet, but I'm at stage one. I'm at the insight stage. And now the invitation for me is to actually bring it down into my body and then have that radiate out into my world and into decisions I make. So I'm making this video in case you are maybe in a similar stage in your life, or if you find yourself in repetitive situations and you're like, this isn't just how life is, this is actually a clue to me that there's a next level of growth, there's a next stage of my evolution. If I want to get there, I have to really examine these things that I find myself in again and again. I love you. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments, have you ever been called a talent? It hits so right. It's the closest thing to drugs, y'all. I haven't smoked weed in so long. Being called talent is the closest thing to hitting a blunt. And I don't miss it. I don't miss it, but I love being called a talent. Okay, bye!